April by Sarah Teasdale. The roofs are shining from the rain, the sparrows twitter as they fly, and with a windy April grace the little clouds go by. Yet the backyards are bare and brown, with only one unchanging tree. I could not be so sure of spring, save that it sings in me. The End. Music by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Let me go where'er I will, I hear a sky-born music still. It sounds from all things old, it sounds from all things young, from all that's fair, from all that's foul peals out a cheerful song. It is not only in the rose, it is not only in the bird, not only where the rainbow glows, nor in the song of woman heard, but in the darkest, meanest things. There alway something sings. 'Tis not in the high stars alone, nor in the cup of budding flowers, nor in the redbreast's mellow tone, nor in the bow that smiles and showers, but in the mud and scum of things. There alway something sings. The End. And here's another poem from A Child's Garden of Verses. This book is compiled by Cooper Edens. And the poetry, of course, is by Robert Louis Stevenson. 3 of us afloat in the meadow by the spring, 3 of us aboard in the basket on the lee. Winds are in the air, they are blowing in the spring, and waves are on the meadow like the waves there are at sea. Where shall we adventure today that we're afloat, wary of the weather and steering by a star? Shall it be to Africa, a steering of the boat, to Providence or Babylon, or off to Malabar? Hi, but here's a squadron, a rowing on the sea, cattle on the meadow, a charging with a roar. Quick, and we'll escape them, they're as mad as they can be. The wicket is the harbour, and the garden is the shore. The End.
Here are a few short stories by James Baldwin. King Alfred and the Cakes. Many years ago there lived in England a wise and good king whose name was Alfred. No other man ever did so much for his country as he, and people now all over the world speak of him as Alfred the Great. In those days, a king did not have a very easy life. There was war almost all the time, and no one else could lead his army into battle so well as he, and so between ruling and fighting he had a busy time of it indeed. A fierce, rude people called the Danes had come from over the sea and were fighting the English. There were so many of them, and they were so bold and strong, that for a long time they gained every battle. If they kept on, they would soon be the masters of the whole country. At last, after a great battle, the English army was broken up and scattered. Every man had to save himself in the best way he could. King Alfred fled alone, in great haste, through the woods and swamps. Late in the day the king came to the hut of a woodcutter. He was very tired and hungry, and he begged the woodcutter's wife to give him something to eat and a place to sleep in her hut. The woman was baking some cakes upon the hearth, and she looked with pity upon the poor ragged fellow who seemed so hungry. She had no thought that he was the king. "Yes," she said, "I will give you some supper, if you will watch these cakes. I want to go out and milk the cow, and you must see that they do not burn while I am gone." King Alfred was very willing to watch the cakes, but he had far greater things to think about. How was he going to get his army together again? And how was he going to drive the fierce Danes out of the land? He forgot his hunger. He forgot the cakes. He forgot that he was in the woodcutter's hut. His mind was busy making plans for tomorrow. In a little while the woman came back. The cakes were smoking on the hearth. They were burnt to a crisp. Ah, how angry she was. "You lazy fellow," she cried, "see what you have done. You want something to eat, but you do not want to work." I have been told that she even struck the king with a stick, but I can hardly believe that she was so ill-natured. The king must have laughed to himself at the thought of being scolded in this way, and he was so hungry that he did not mind the woman's angry words half so much as the loss of the cakes. I do not know whether he had anything to eat that night, or whether he had to go to bed without his supper, but it was not many days until he had gathered his men together again, and had beaten the Danes in a great battle. The End. King Canute on the Seashore. 100 years or more after the time of Alfred the Great, there was a king of England named Canute. King Canute was a Dane, but the Danes were not so fierce and cruel then as they had been when they were at war with King Alfred. The great men and officers who were around King Canute were always praising him. "You are the greatest man that ever lived," one would say. Then another would say, "O king, there can never be another man so mighty as you." And another would say, "Great Canute, there is nothing in the world that dares to disobey you." The king was a man of sense, and he grew very tired of hearing such foolish speeches. One day he was by the seashore, and his officers were with him. They were praising him, as they were in the habit of doing. He thought that now he would teach them a lesson, and so he bade them set his chair on the beach close by the edge of the water. "Am I the greatest man in the world?" he asked. "O king," they cried, "there is no one so mighty as you." "Do all things obey me?" he asked. "There is nothing that dares to disobey you, O king," they said. "The world bows before you and gives you honor." "Will the sea obey me?" he asked, and he looked down at the little waves which were lapping the sand at his feet. The foolish officers were puzzled, but they did not dare to say no. "Command it, O king, and it will obey," said one. "See," cried Canute, "I command you to come no farther. Waves, stop your rolling, and do not dare to touch my feet." But the tide came in, just as it always did. The waters rose higher and higher. It came up around the king's chair and wet not only his feet, but also his robe. His officers stood about him, alarmed and wondering whether he was not mad. Then Canute took off his crown and threw it down upon the sand. "I shall never wear it again," he said, "and do you, my men, learn a lesson from what you have seen. There is only one king who is all-powerful, and it is he who rules the sea and holds the ocean in the hollow of his hand. It is he whom you ought to praise and serve above all others." The end. King John and the Abbot. Part 1. The Three Questions. There was once a king of England whose name was John. He was a bad king, for he was harsh and cruel to his people, and so long as he could have his own way, he did not care what became of other folks. He was the worst king that England ever had. Now, there was in the country of Canterbury a rich old abbot who lived in grand style in a great house called the Abbey. Every day 100 noble men sat down with him to dine, and 50 brave knights in fine velvet coats and gold chains waited upon him at his table. When King John heard of the way in which the abbot lived, he made up his mind to put a stop to it. So he sent for the old man to come and see him. "How now, my good abbot?" he said. "I hear that you keep a far better house than I. How dare you do such a thing? Don't you know that no man in the land ought to live better than the king? And I tell you that no man shall." "O king," said the abbot, "I beg to say that I am spending nothing but what is my own. I hope that you will not think ill of me for making things pleasant for my friends and the brave knights who are with me." "Think ill of you?" said the king. "How can I help but think ill of you? All that there is in this broad land is mine by right, and how do you dare to put me to shame by living in a grander style than I? One would think that you were trying to be king in my place." "Oh, do not say so," said the abbot, "for I—" "Not another word," cried the king. "Your fault is plain, and unless you can answer me 3 questions, your head shall be cut off, and all your riches shall be mine." "I will try to answer them, O king," said the abbot. "Well then," said King John, "as I sit here with my crown of gold on my head, you must tell me within a day just how long I shall live. Secondly, you must tell me how soon I shall ride round the whole world. And lastly, you shall tell me what I think." "O king," said the abbot, "these are deep, hard questions, and I cannot answer them just now. But if you will give me 2 weeks to think about them, I will do the best that I can." "2 weeks you shall have," said the king. "But if then you fail to answer me, you shall lose your head, and all your lands shall be mine." The abbot went away very sad and in great fear. He rode first to Oxford. Here was a great school called a university, and he wanted to see if any of the wise professors could help him. But they shook their heads and said that there was nothing about King John in any of their books. Then the abbot rode down to Cambridge, where there was another university, but not one of the teachers in that great school could help him. At last, sad and sorrowful, he rode toward home to bid his friends and his brave knights good-bye, for now he had not a week to live. Part 2. The Three Answers. As the abbot was riding up the lane which led to his grand house, he met his shepherd going to the fields. "Welcome home, good master," cried the shepherd. "What news do you bring us from great King John?" "Sad news, sad news," said the abbot, and then he told him all that had happened. Cheer up, good master," said the shepherd. "Have you never yet heard that a fool may teach a wise man wit? I think I can help you out of your trouble." "You help me?" cried the abbot. "How? How?" "Well," answered the shepherd, "you know that everybody says that I look just like you, and that I have sometimes been mistaken for you. So lend me your servants and your horse and your gown, and I will go up to London and see the king. If nothing else can be done, I can at least die in your place." "My good shepherd," said the abbot, "you are very, very kind, and I have a mind to let you try your plan. But if the worst comes to the worst, you shall not die for me. I will die for myself." So the shepherd got ready to go at once. He dressed himself with great care. Over his shepherd's coat he threw the abbot's long gown, and he borrowed the abbot's cap and golden staff. When all was ready, no one in the world would have thought that he was not the great man himself. Then he mounted his horse, and with a great train of servants set out for London. Of course, the king did not know him. "Welcome, Sir Abbot," he said. "It is a good thing that you have come back. But, prompt as you are, if you fail to answer my 3 questions, you shall lose your head." "I am ready to answer them, O king," said the shepherd. "Indeed, indeed," said the king, and he laughed to himself. "Well then, answer my first question. How long shall I live? Come, you must tell me to the very day." "You shall live," said the shepherd, "until the day that you die, and not 1 day longer. And you shall die when you take your last breath, and not 1 moment before." The king laughed. "You are witty, I see," he said. "But we will let that pass, and say that your answer is right. And now tell me how soon I may ride round the world." "You must rise with the sun," said the shepherd, "and you must ride with the sun until it rises again the next morning. As soon as you do that, you will find that you have ridden around the world in 24 hours. The king laughed again. "Indeed," he said, "I did not think that it could be done so soon. You are not only witty, but you are wise, and we will let this answer pass. And now comes my 3rd and last question. What do I think?" "That is an easy question," said the shepherd. "You think that I am the Abbot of Canterbury, but to tell you the truth, I am only his poor shepherd, and I have come to beg your pardon for him and for me." And with that he threw off his long gown. The king laughed loud and long. "A merry fellow you are," said he, "and you shall be Abbot of Canterbury in your master's place." "O king, that cannot be," said the shepherd, "for I can neither read nor write." "Very well then," said the king, "I will give you something else to pay you for this merry joke. I will give you 4 pieces of silver every week as long as you live, and when you get home you may tell the old abbot that you have brought him a free pardon from King John." The end. The Bell of Atri. Atri is the name of a little town in Italy. It is a very old town and is built halfway up the side of a steep hill. A long time ago, the king of Atri bought a fine large bell and had it hung up in a tower in the marketplace. A long rope that reached almost to the ground was fastened to the bell. The smallest child could ring the bell by pulling upon this rope. "It is the bell of justice," said the king. When at last everything was ready, the people of Atri had a great holiday. All the men and women and children came down to the marketplace to look at the bell of justice. It was a very pretty bell, and was polished until it looked almost as bright and yellow as the sun. "How we should like to hear it ring," they said. Then the king came down the street. "Perhaps he will ring it," said the people, and everybody stood very still and waited to see what he would do. But he did not ring the bell. He did not even take the rope in his hands. When he came to the foot of the tower, he stopped and raised his hand. "My people," he said, "do you see this beautiful bell? It is your bell, but it must never be rung except in case of need. If any one of you is wronged at any time, he may come and ring the bell, and then the judges shall come together at once and hear his case and give him justice. Rich and poor, old and young, all alike may come, but no one must touch the rope unless he knows that he has been wronged." Many years passed by after this. Many times did the bell in the marketplace ring out to call the judges together. Many wrongs were righted. Many ill-doers were punished. At last the hempen rope was almost worn out. The lower part of it was untwisted. Some of the strands were broken. It became so short that only a tall man could reach it. "This will never do," said the judges one day. "What if a child should be wronged? It could not ring the bell to let us know it." They gave orders that a new rope should be put upon the bell at once, a rope that should hang down to the ground so that the smallest child could reach it. But there was not a rope to be found in all Atri. They would have to send across the mountains for one, and it would be many days before it could be brought. What if some great wrong should be done before it came? How could the judges know about it if the injured one could not reach the old rope? "Let me fix it for you," said a man who stood by. He ran into his garden, which was not far away, and soon came back with a long grapevine in his hands. "This will do for a rope," he said, and he climbed up and fastened it to the bell. The slender vine, with its leaves and tendrils still upon it, trailed to the ground. "Yes," said the judges, "it is a very good rope. Let it be as it is." Now, on the hillside above the village there lived a man who had once been a brave knight. In his youth he had ridden through many lands, and he had fought in many a battle. His best friend through all that time had been his horse, a strong, noble steed that had borne him safe through many a danger. But the knight, when he grew older, cared no more to ride into battle. He cared no more to do brave deeds. He thought of nothing but gold. He became a miser. At last he sold all that he had, except his horse, and went to live in a little hut on the hillside. Day after day he sat among his money bags and planned how he might get more gold. And day after day his horse stood in his bare stall, half-starved and shivering with cold. "What is the use of keeping that lazy steed?" said the miser to himself one morning. "Every week it costs me more to keep him than he is worth. I might sell him, but there is not a man that wants him. I cannot even give him away. I will turn him out to shift for himself and pick grass by the roadside. If he starves to death, so much the better." So the old brave horse was turned out to find what he could among the rocks on the barren hillside. Lame and sick, he strolled among the dusty roads, glad to find a blade of grass or a thistle. The boys threw stones at him, the dogs barked at him, and in all the world there was no one to pity him. One hot afternoon, when no one was upon the street, the horse chanced to wander into the marketplace. Not a man or child was there, for the heat of the sun had driven them all indoors. The gates were wide open. The poor beast could roam where he pleased. He saw the grapevine rope that hung from the bell of justice. The leaves and tendrils upon it were still fresh and green, for it had not been there long. What a fine dinner they would be for a starving horse! He stretched his thin neck and took one of the tempting morsels in his mouth. It was hard to break it from the vine. He pulled at it, and the great bell above him began to ring. All the people in Atri heard it. It seemed to say, "Someone has done me wrong. Someone has done me wrong. Oh, come and judge my case. Oh, come and judge my case, for I've been wronged." The judges heard it. They put on their robes and went out through the hot streets to the marketplace. They wondered who it could be who would ring the bell at such a time. When they passed through the gate, they saw the old horse nibbling at the vine. "Ha!" cried one. "It is the miser's steed. He has come to call for justice, for his master, as everybody knows, has treated him most shamefully." "He pleads his cause as well as any dumb brute can," said another. "And he shall have justice," said the third. Meanwhile, a crowd of men and women and children had come into the marketplace, eager to learn what cause the judges were about to try. When they saw the horse, all stood still in wonder. Then everyone was ready to tell how they had seen him wandering on the hills, unfed, uncared for, while his master sat at home counting his bags of gold. "Go and bring the miser before us," said the judges. And when he came, they bade him stand and hear their judgment. "The horse has served you well for many a year," they said. "He has saved you from many a peril. He has helped you gain your wealth. Therefore we order that 1/2 of all your gold shall be set aside to buy him shelter and food, a green pasture where he may graze, and a warm stall to comfort him in his old age." The miser hung his head and grieved to lose his gold. But the people shouted with joy, and the horse was led away to his new stall and a dinner such as he had not had in many a day. The end.